let's talk about death. Yes. Shall we?
Let's
I,
talk about it. Who doesn't like talking about death?
thank you for the interpretation of what death looks like. What do you do when you're dead? Well, you don't do anything because you're dead. But what
Well,
should you do leading up to it when it comes to your money? It can get weird. You should make sure you
yep,
plan for it to make sure it's not weird once you are dead. How to
yep.
prepare for your estate before you die. That's all coming up on Money Makes It Weird next. Welcome to another edition of Money Makes It Weird. Glad to have you here. I am professional talking head Matt Hayes, and this gentleman right next to me,
Chris,
Chris
Bonk.
Fox, Chris Fox.
I'm going to try and screw you up on this every time.
Yes, you are. I appreciate that. You're keeping me on my toes. You keep 20-something years of professional expertise. You are keeping me on my toes. I appreciate that. That
Great.
is Chris Fox. He is a certified financial planner with Fox Financial and IPC Securities. Glad to have you here. Thanks so much. And Chris, this week it's a little bit different. You know, on the internet, we always see people saying, I'm dead, dead, totally dead. You know, it's kind of like the fun meme of, they see something, hear something like, oh, so totally dead. But we're not talking about like, Taylor Swift gets a new album and I'm like totally dead type dead. We're talking like I'm in the ground and like it's totally over type dead, actually
Right.
dead at this point.
6
And
feet
what do
under.
you, 6 feet under dead, and what you actually do with your money dead, because it can be weird if you don't take care of it right. So
Sure.
this week on Money Makes It Weird, we're talking about estate planning. And because it's a thing that's actually over the last couple of weeks been talked about a lot on Reddit, which is something we do here on the podcast. We dig
Mm-hmm.
into the depths of the internet and talk about what's been talked about on personal finance Reddit. So we're going to go through some of the articles. And again, the things that we talk about, the articles that we read are people's personal opinions and personal thoughts. And the information that we share is not specific to anybody and not specific to your specific needs. Make sure to reach out to your own personal specific professionals in your own world to find
Uh-huh.
out specific information for your own specific needs. But Chris, what really sparked me was this article, and I wanted to get your reaction to it to start it off from Only on Tuesdays 289. I want to first off want to know what they only do on Tuesdays.
289.
Their title of this is What to Put in My quote unquote I'm Dead folder for my family, which I absolutely love. Hi,
Mm-hmm.
all. We had a death in the family, and it's made me realize that while I am reasonably well organized financially, I am not organized enough. Does anyone have or know a good resource outline of what I need to organize for my wife and kids? Everything from passwords to my phone and computer, last 5 years tax returns, etc. Thanks. And then as I was digging through, there's actually a lot of people that want to learn about estate planning and, basic
Mm-hmm.
end of life information. And, when as I was thinking about this, Chris, this isn't really something that, and we know about death and we talk about it more, I think, on a spiritual level so much, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't really necessarily talk about the logistics of it though.
Yep. It can be weird if
Yeah.
you don't plan for it, right? You have no say once you're dead, right? So
That's so
that
true.
will, or the estate planning, the will is the most important part.
Yeah.
It tells your family and your executors what you want to happen. So
Yeah.
it's better to do it before than after. It's much easier,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone should have a will, right? If you
Yeah.
have zero assets, you don't need a will. If
Yeah.
you've got assets, you need a will. Full stop.
Gotcha. So at
Yep,
least that's the basic. That's kind of like baseline, at least at this point.
you bet.
So
Yeah.
gotcha.
And
So
in addition to that, just for
yeah.
that will part of it, you need that power of attorney for healthcare
Hmm.
and for financial decisions, right? So,
Hmm.
if you're in your 40s or 50s, you have a greater chance of getting disabled, right? However that may happen, than dying.
Yeah.
So if I get hit by a bus and I don't have a healthcare directive saying pull the plug,
Hmm.
or, Kelly, this is you can manage my finances, right? Because I can't make any decisions. You need that part of the estate planning documents, right? So
Yeah.
that's gets my heart racing a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's so important, so important. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we dig a little bit more into what to put in your I'm dead folder, which I absolutely love as a term, and apparently I guess that you said that this is a thing on Instagram people are
Yeah,
talking about more. So
yeah. I don't know if it's figured out in the algorithm what I do, but it's like
yeah.
just all these ads, not for not for death, but like just how to die. Uh,
What I don't know what you're watching on Instagram, my friend, but you know whatever you watch is your thing. What percentage would you say of people that when they sit down with you are properly prepared for the inevitable? Are
half.
most people have at least have something, or what is it
Yeah,
like?
it depends on the client, and I would say it depends on the age of the client. Older clients
Yeah.
generally have one. They're they're aware of the importance. Younger clients, not so much, right? So it's yeah. So depends on the age for sure. I think about
Mhm.
50% of Canadians have wills. So,
That's it.
you know, that's not a lot. Not a
No,
lot.
no.
50% of Canadian adults. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So let's before we get into what you should do, how you should do it, I kind of want to dig into like if you're just starting out versus, kind
Hmm.
of in a little bit middle, like 30s and 40s versus later in life. Let's go
Yeah.
into it section by section. But first, if someone, let's play hypothetical, someone
Yep.
dies and they don't have a will and they have some sort of assets. What
Yep.
doesn't matter how many. What does that process? I'm sure it varies
Yeah.
depending on province,
It
but
does.
generic overall, what does
Overall.
that
Yeah.
process then look like for a family?
So that's called dying intestate. And basically, the courts will decide how your assets are distributed. You
Mm,
you didn't say how you want it, so the courts will, you know, if you're a single person with kids, they'll decide who is taking care of your kids,
mhm,
while they're making that and this is not a overnight thing. Those kids could go into foster care for a period of time before
mhm,
the courts made a decision on the sibling or something like that. It's a really long process that you have no control over, right?
mm,
If you're even if you're married, right? It's not automatic that your spouse will get all those assets, right? If there's some assets that you own that have no beneficiary on them, it makes things a lot more complicated. Yeah.
mm. Does not sound like a fun situation you want to put your family through in any way, shape, or form, honestly.
No, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's tax consequences potentially
yeah,
too. If you're not taking advantage of spousal rollovers, that kind of idea. If you wanted to leave money for your kids, or someone outside of the family,
mhm,
if you die intestate, that's not going to happen. It's just going to
yeah,
be within the family. So,
yeah,
and like you said, every province is different on that.
right. So let's talk about, we'll go kind of, we'll start first off with if you're just starting out and you want to build this I'm dead folder,
Mhm.
you don't have it. I know you said you first start off with the will, but you want to start this process.
Yeah,
You have a client that sits down with you for the first time and says, I don't have anything laid out. What do I need to
yeah.
do? What do you tell them? How do you say you start this process out?
I have a booklet.
Ooh, a booklet.
I give
At
them
least you
that
got a starting
booklet.
pad.
Let's start there.
Yeah. So,
But
so you got the
but
booklet. What else
basically,
you do?
I mean, it's all you want to have in one place, all your assets, all your contracts that you may have signed, like car lease, all your credit card account numbers, bills, right?
Mhm,
Your gas, your electricity, all that kind of stuff. Utilities, phone, cell phone, password. Like if you have a password manager, that's
mhm.
probably the best because then you're just listing one password. Or you tell them where to open the drawer and find the book that says passwords. Seen it.
I
Lots.
bet. Yeah.
Lots. Looking at you, Dad.
Yeah.
So if it's important to have all that stuff in one place. So if something happens, there's a record of for your executor where to, what accounts to what accounts to cancel,
Mhm,
uh, or transfer, um, making sure, all the accounts are accounted for, right? So if
mhm,
you have, a bunch of different bank accounts at different banks and your spouse only knows about one of them for some reason. That doesn't make sense, right?
Mm.
Um, but some clients I've had diversify by bank. They want to keep everything in one bank, and it's like you're making it very complex for your
Mhm.
executor, right? So, anyway, having all that stuff listed, how to access it, um, will make life so much easier for your executor because it's a tough job being an executor. You want to choose someone that is going to be financially responsible. It's a lot of responsibility. So yeah.
Is that where you also put the very secretive Christmas, recipes that those secret
Ooh,
recipes that you have that you
ooh,
you don't tell anybody about, but you make at Christmas? Everyone's like,
mhm.
that secret dish you bring that everyone's
Maybe.
excited, is the only reason why you still get invited to
Sounds
Christmas?
like an asset to me. Yeah.
And you put that in that folder then, right? Because you don't want that to
Yeah.
disappear.
No. And who gets it?
Oh,
Who
you gotta
gets
put
that
that in the will,
recipe?
that's very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and even if things are pretty simple,
Mhm.
you're married with a couple kids, you're young, a crisscross, your spouse gets all of this stuff and you get all their stuff. And then make it simple, right? If there's
Yeah.
some certain assets or jewelry or something like that that wants to get passed on specifically, you can make a note of that. But you know, a sim- the simpler, sometimes the better, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to an executor, then what type of person should someone be looking for? Is it a family member? Is it someone that's close?
Yeah,
Is it someone on the outside that can be like a neutral third party?
it could be both or either. I mean, usually a spouse is an executor, and you can have two, right? You can have a co-executor. So, you can make your spouse the executor or co-executor along with, you know, your brother or dad, depending on who you are, right? Someone who's going to actually do that work. And maybe the spouse doesn't want to do that work, right?
Mhm.
Um, you can also have a third party, right? Hire a company to do that. We have relationships with companies that do that. If you want to keep it, you know, out of someone's hands, right, or make it easier, much easier. There
Yeah.
is a cost to that for sure, but
Yeah.
you know, if you want it to be completely transparent and fair, and if there's some, you know, maybe between the beneficiaries, there's some issues of who gets what or how things are divided. A
Yeah.
third party would be a pretty good idea. Yeah.
So before we get into, you've done this and maybe you're a little bit later in life, we'll get into that section here in a second, but is this something that someone can do on their own? Because we are in the day of the internet and it seems to be there's tons of online tools,
Yeah.
people can get anything done. Or is this something that you really should hire an attorney or a professional to do? What do is there, or is it a mix of
Yeah.
of both? What do you
Yeah.
recommend?
Gold standard is to hire a lawyer, right? You're not going to miss anything. Laws change, provincial rules change. You
Yeah.
want to make sure you're on top of it, right? Um, Especially if there's any kind of complication.
Yeah.
That being said, something is better than nothing, right?
Mm,
Um, those will kits, sometimes the assets don't get diverse or dispersed properly. Um, and there can be confusion in those. And then there's even the holographic will, right? A handwritten will,
mhm.
which in Alberta is still legal, but it's kind of flimsy, right? At least it
Yeah.
shows intent. And if it's, I'm going on vacation, I leave everything to my spouse and you sign it and you stick it in the drawer. It's better than nothing, but
Right.
hire a lawyer, spend the
Yeah.
money. It
Yeah.
simple will's not that expensive, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about your estate and
Yeah.
how you want things to go.
Yeah.
So,
If anyone has ever watched the TV show Succession, you know that, any sort of like last minute handwritten
oh
notes
yeah.
later in the show, when there's billions of dollars on the line kind of screws everything's up,
Yeah,
especially for multi-billionaires and a
right?
media company on the line. So, not to spoil anything, it really isn't much of a spoiler.
Yep.
It's trust me, it's not. But trust me, you don't want to leave it in the hands of just a handwritten note and
No.
a bunch of rich people that are trying to fight for a media company. But let's move
Mhm.
on from that. But
Yeah.
uh, so so you have the basics done. Let's say you've already had it done and
Yeah.
maybe, it's been a couple of years, you talked about how, provincial law can change.
Yep.
Let's say you've had it done for a while. Is it worth kind of, taking a look to go back? Maybe,
Yeah, you bet.
life changes at points, laws change,
Mhm.
people's financial situations have changed over time.
Absolutely.
How often should you go back and take a look? What type of conversations, what does that look like?
Yeah, if you move between provinces, you need a new will.
Mm,
You get married, divorced, you have kids, someone dies, uh, you need to update that, right?
yeah.
I always say looking at it every 5 years or so, just saying, "Does this all make sense? Do I want this person to take care of my kids? Do I still wanna have this person as my beneficiary or my executor?" Um, if that all makes sense, great. Every 10 years, maybe call your lawyer and say, "Hey, do I need to update this?
Mm,
Everything's pretty stable." Um, if something minor has changed, they might say, "Oh, write a codicil, just to adjust something." But yeah, every 5 years for sure, take a look at it. Or if
yeah.
any big life event, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're gonna buy a new house, right, Matt?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Plants.
Yes, you're gonna buy a new house and you need to put plants in it. If that potentially might be happening in your future, yes, that's what
Mhm.
you might need to have to worry about, updating your will at that point. Not like that's
You bet.
happening in my world potentially here if I have to go to an open house this weekend and take a look at a house and
And consider, it kind of leads me to think, a little more seriously,
yeah.
consider digital assets.
Mm,
Like, if you own a business and all your stuff's in the cloud,
yeah.
right? How does that get accessed?
Mm,
Who is gonna take care of that?
yeah.
You know, uh, online files of photos and all that kind of stuff, right? It's just
Yep.
there's a lot to consider, right?
Yeah,
So,
and you joked about, your dad with the password book and all, but, I do think about, like, me, I did actually write down, there is a piece of paper somewhere in an envelope with my master password
yep,
for my password lock
yep,
service that
yep,
I use. So if anything happens, there is access that someone can
yep,
grab that piece of paper, access to every single password and access to every element
yep,
of my cloud and all of my bank, all
yep.
of everything that is out there that someone might need access to, they can be able to find that.
Nice.
So,
And you keep
yes,
that in a
there's
very safe place,
I
right?
definitely do. Oh,
Yep,
100%. But then
yep.
I think about my mom, where there's 5 pieces of paper that are spread all throughout her house, and I know that, if I have to go through that, God forbid, whenever that day happens, there's
Mhm.
about 5 pieces of paper I'm gonna have to go through, and,
Yeah,
I've been trying to move her actually to a password type of service, whether it's
yeah.
attached to mine or something else, because that little thing can make such the difference when
Mhm.
someone passes, and especially too, wh- when that if you're going to do that, there's a way for with a lot of these to be able to have a secondary person attached to it.
Mm,
Especially, we're going to be talking about, when you're kind of a little bit later in life here in a second about what to do with your will and all. But if you're starting
yep.
to get to that stage in life, it's good, whether it's your executor or a family member that you trust, to
Mhm.
have them as a secondary person. Because, especially from a tech standpoint, if someone tries to log into my master password that's nowhere near me, there's going to
Yep.
be a 2FA, two factor
Right.
authentication alert that's going to alert me. So, I'm going to find out about it.
Yep.
So there are certain security levels that are attached to it, so not everybody can get on it. But
Mhm.
a lot of these services have the ability to add somebody secondary. So in the event someone passes away, there is that secondary or third person that's attached to it that might need to have access
Right.
to it, can be able to have access to it to be able to get all that information and be able to get into it with ease without that problem. So
Mhm.
these tools and technology do make it easy,
Yep.
especially for people that are a little bit older, a little bit later in life, especially Apple. And if I don't want to name all of them, but I know a lot of these tools do have the ability to be able to do that. And
Mhm.
just sitting down in an afternoon, taking it, and it doesn't even take like an hour. You can just sit through, go everything, organize everything, put it together. It just makes it so much easier for everybody to just get it organized and put together. So that way, when that moment happens, that relieves so much stress just knowing that I can go into this one place, this one portal,
Mhm.
and everything you're going to need, passwords, bank account numbers, all of that are all digitally
Yep.
available, and you can easily access it and not have to worry about trying to go through security hoops to be able to
Yep.
get the information that you're going to
Yeah.
need.
Right. Access is key, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about, a little bit kind of, your midlife, I guess you could say, but maybe you're now kind of moving a little bit towards later in life. Maybe you're in that retirement stage a little bit later in life.
Mhm.
You know that, life changes at that point and you're a little bit more worried about, your life changing and all. And
Mhm.
maybe there's grandkids involved, maybe your kids
Yeah.
are older now, maybe they're in
Yeah.
their 30s and 40s and all. So, when you're a little bit at a later stage in life and maybe a little bit the back nine of life, I guess we can say is a polite way to
Nice.
put it. How does that then change estate planning? Do you look at it a little bit differently? Do you change the way it's done differently? Do you double check things differently? How does that look?
Yeah, I think you wanna be looking at it a little bit more often. Maybe 10
Okay.
years is the right time frame,
Hmm.
right? And now you're looking at, like you said, grandchildren, and in some
Hmm.
cases, grandchildren's grandchildren. How do you want those assets to flow? Do you want them to go to your kids? And then if let's say your son dies, it goes to his share goes to his wife? Or
Yeah.
does it go further down the line to their kids, right? Are they
Hmm.
minors? Does a trustee need to be involved? Like, yada, yada.
Yep.
Um, a lot of my clients, are wealthy, and it becomes more distributing assets while they're alive,
Mm.
giving gifts so that they can see the benefit of those gifts, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, a a grandson going to university is struggling. Oh, grandma gives you a bit of cash to get you through.
Hmm.
Makes you feel better, right?
Yeah.
If all the income needs are satisfied and now it's you're thinking about the end of life, why wait, right?
Mm.
Especially with some of those smaller things like jewelry or heirlooms or the recipe or art,
Yeah.
um, it's pretty I think it's easier to do that while you're alive and have the conversation with your kids. Like,
Yeah.
that's so important. Like,
Yeah.
this is what we want to happen when we go, or if we become incapacitated or infirm, right? This is what our wishes are. And parents will have different, you know, uh, wants and needs, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes much more immediate, that's for sure. But those are
Yeah.
tough
I love
conversations to have.
Yeah, but I also love because you also then really build a great memory for that family member too, especially if it's something like jewelry or art. Or I know we've been joking
Mhm.
about that stupid recipe, but even if it is something like that, where it's
Yep,
been, grandma's been made this for 30 years, but you get to make the holiday pie or whatever it
yep,
is has been a memory, and you get to now make it with her that one year, and you
yeah,
get to know the family secret that nobody else gets to know.
yeah,
You're the special grandchild. You get
that's
that,
right.
you
That's
get
right.
that memory and you get to hand it down, and it
Mhm.
can, and all these different heirlooms and assets, and
Yep,
whether it's, those specific assets or whether it is a financial asset, you
yeah,
can see the benefit and you can kind of get that because you don't get to, on the, when you're 6 feet underground, you don't get to see that. You don't get to
yep.
feel that. You can feel it before you go.
Mhm.
Is there also then, I'm sure it depends depending on the, again, always varies depending on which province you live in.
Yep.
Is there also, better tax benefits by doing that before you pass than after though too?
Well, I mean, you'd be paying the tax now if there was a taxable event,
Yeah,
while you're alive versus your estate, right?
gotcha.
but you have control. So you can make that
Right.
decision consciously. And, with some tax planning, potentially create some capital losses to offset future capital gains. And
Yeah.
yeah, that can be managed for sure.
No matter what, the province and the government of Canada is going to get their money. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's for sure. But you want to have that control and decide when
right.
it happens, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really cool hearing the stories from my clients of how they are giving that money away, right? And
Yeah. I
and what
love
it's
that.
going to, right? It is
Yeah.
pretty cool. So cool.
And not even just like family members, but even if it's a charity or, a trust or something that,
Yeah.
a cause that they believe in, you know,
Mhm.
if there's something that you've worked for so many years and you're going to be giving that sum of money to an organization that you truly believe in, to
Yeah.
be able to see that money go to work while you're still alive is probably such an
Mhm.
amazing feeling. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Create that kind of legacy.
But you still have to do your paperwork though.
Do the
Still have
paper.
to make sure your will and everything is all set no matter what. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Has there been any horror stories that you have heard about? I mean, it doesn't have to be anything. I know you can't
Mm,
name about specific situations regarding
no.
your clients. You would never do that. But have there been anything that you've heard
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
that
I
you've been
had
like, I can't believe that has happened?
yeah, clients, did not have a healthcare directive, power of attorney, or a will,
Hmm.
common law, and been together for a long time.
Yeah.
Husband gets disabled, like fell off the roof,
Mm,
quadriplegic. She had to apply to the courts to be his guardian, to manage his affairs, his financial affairs. And for something like 5 years, she had to report to the government what she was doing with all of that money because he had pension money, right? And disability
yeah.
pension and stuff like that. So money was coming in. Thankfully, they were okay, but she had to report that for such a long time. And how much of a pain in the ass would that be
Yeah.
versus spending a few $100s and getting it all taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
How about you?
crazy. I hear more about the change in executors when family situations change,
Mhm.
when, maybe, you, because so often it almost seems to be that the eldest is just assumed to be the
Yeah.
executor.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if the elder is not as responsible, or there's
Mhm.
a family situation, it comes down to like two or three, which then can maybe cause some, if someone passes on, then that
Yeah.
causes some tension and drama because the elder might think, well, I'm supposed to be the executor because I'm
Mhm.
the eldest,
Yeah.
so that's where it can be a problem. I definitely can see
Yeah.
and hear that. I believe we've talked about it on the pod before, but when my grandmother passed away, on my dad's side, my dad died before my grandmother did.
Okay.
And my mom never had a really good relationship with my grandmother. Honestly, a lot of my family members didn't have a great relationship with my grandmother. It
Mm.
wasn't my mom. My grandma was just a pain. It's just a well known thing in the family. But when she passed on, we just assumed that, however my mom would get the money and then it was either split between my brother and I, or,
Yeah.
it was split three ways. I wasn't exactly sure how the will was totally written out. My dad was kind of always the leader amongst the, that family. So I kind of
Mm.
helped guide my aunt who was the executor. I just kind of
Right.
helped said, all right, here's how, because she didn't live where my grandmother's originally from, Cleveland, or where most of my family is. So I kind of helped guide, all right, here's where maybe we should do the funeral or the dinner. I kind of helped guide all of that.
Yeah.
So she kind of opened me up a little bit to the will and said, I've never told you this, but a few years ago, before my grandmother started to have some dementia issues, while she was still able to make the decisions,
Mhm.
she changed the will so that my mother, if my father passed away, the money skipped my mom and
Oh.
split 50-50 between me and my brother.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And I didn't know that.
Hmm.
And my mom told me that, and I went, "Okay,
Mm.
this is fun." Yeah,
Awkward.
like, awkward, and I told my mom, I said, "I am so sorry," and I offered, I said, "I am more than willing to give you half of it. I am more than willing." I'm like, That's not right. And she said,
Mhm.
no, it's okay. My mom said, I don't need it. Your grandmother and I did not have a good relationship. Honestly, my grandmother and I also did not have a good relationship when it was later
Mm.
in life. Again, it was not good amongst a lot of family members and
Right.
all. But there was a lot of awkward moments like that through that whole thing in her later part in life and all, but it was just kind of one of those. I had no idea. And then once the envelope was opened and I heard about that, I'm like, I didn't know about that. And apparently my
Mhm.
mom kind of heard rumors about that and all and had no
Mm.
idea that it was actually written that way
Wow.
until after she passed on. So,
Right.
yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. In Canada, in a family situation, if I tried to cut out my spouse,
Mhm.
that's not allowed, right?
Mm.
I can't remember what the exact percentage is, but the spouse, as a dependent or
Mhm.
partner, needs to be taken care of if you die
Mm.
without a will, right? And
Wow.
even if you die with a will and say I'm cutting her out, it's everything going to the kids, she can definitely contest that. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Well, again, I'm on the other side of the border in America where we have no
America,
rules. So, America, that's right. So, again, as we've said before at the beginning, each situation is going to be specific to each person's situational
you
needs.
bet.
But if they wanted to learn about their own situation, maybe dig a little bit more, Chris, you
Yeah,
mentioned that you have, some booklets and information that can help
yep,
people on this path. If they want to learn more about that, how can they reach out to you and have a conversation?
yeah. Go to my website, foxfinancial.ca,
Hmm.
and I'd be more than happy to send you that stuff. And this is just scratching the surface. There's like we can take this topic and just keep going, right? There's
Yeah.
estate lawyers that, this is all they do, just estate stuff, complicated, making sure everything's bulletproof. Um, yeah, what type of accounts can bypass the will, all that kind of stuff. So maybe that's another topic later on.
That can be, yeah. We can get a little bit more specific about that. We can dig definitely for sure into that. Overall, I think one thing you can easily start with to take away is what you talked about with this, like the digital passwords. Is something you can easily do this weekend with
Mhm.
your partner or your spouse, but even your parents. That's something you can easily just go and set up with them and sit down and go, hey, you know, things could happen. And, I need to know that I can be able to access everything and get all this information.
Mhm.
Not only where is the folder with all the information, like I know where it is at my mom's house and I know where the password pages are, but,
Yep.
taking the time to do a little bit of research. And, a lot of these services are only 10 or $20 a year to
Yeah.
have a password service online where you can keep all this information that is
Yeah.
very secure and very safe. You can add yourself as a secondary person on there and have access to it if somebody
Mhm.
passes away,
Yeah.
and you can easily be able to access it if something happens that way. Just taking a little bit of time, go over, make them lunch, sit down, organize all of that, take the time to do that can make all that little bit of a difference and add a
Mhm.
peace of mind and at least also open up and start the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Talk about it.
Absolutely. Got to
Talk
talk about it.
about it. Talk about it. Talk about it.
And now I
Do,
have to
do,
pay
do, do,
$500 for using
do,
that
do,
song.
do, do.
Appreciate that. We appreciate that. Foxfinancial.ca is where you can get more information and also make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll have another episode coming up in another week and a half. Mr. Chris Fox, thanks again, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Cheers.
Trademarks owned by Investment Planning Counsel Incorporated and licensed to its subsidiary corporations. Investment Planning Counsel is a fully integrated wealth management company. Mutual funds available through IPC Investment Corporation and IPC Securities Corporation. Securities available through IPC Securities Corporation, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Insurance products available through Chris Fox.